Because right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks for sticking around for the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. I'm Rich Walsh. I'll be joined by Chris Mueller in a matter of moments over to 93.7 The Fan Cam, and we're taking your phone calls tonight. 412-575-2600 is the number. There goes Chris right now. I like the golf hoodie. You always come styling on this show, Chris. I'm impressed sometimes.
I mean, I've got to keep it like both casual but refined casual, Rich. That is what I'm always striving for in the Nightly Sports Call.
And that's a good way to call it, refined casual. I've kind of trended, went in that direction a little bit ever since COVID. I wear a lot of golf hoodies to cover Steelers now. Before, I would wear a suit and a tie, and I think it's gone more relaxed. I like it. I think it's fashionable.
Just know that one day, and you won't ever know in advance, I'm going to do the ultimate paying off of this bit by showing up for this show in a full black tie tuxedo look. Like pants and everything, even though I'm only shot from the chest up. I will have the entire look one random day in like July of 2028.
All right, I'll be waiting for it. Speaking of looks, Antonio Brown, what kind of look does he have right now? He's headed to jail on what, murder charges? He was extradited from attempted murder charges. Correct. Sorry. Let me correct myself. Attempted murder charges. Thank you. Extradited from Dubai, right?
Yeah, where he had been for several months apparently after being wanted. The U.S. Marshals brought him in. I mean, this is another sad chapter for a guy who had all the ability, all the capacity for greatness on the field, and we saw the absolute best of it really in this town, and has just continually been unable and seemingly unwilling to get his life in order off the field. And as always, when the situation revolves around him, I think two things. One, the only thing that's ever going to happen positively for him is him having some sort of like wake-up call moment where he realizes he can't just keep getting away with whatever it is that he does and the way he treats people and acts. And two, he's got several kids. I feel bad as a parent myself thinking about what sometimes they might go through. No matter how much money he has, it does not seem like a very stable environment in which to be raising children.
It's a really sad story. I mean, I had a chance to cover AB when he was here. It didn't end well here. It didn't end well anywhere for AB, but what could have been. I feel like some of these players sometimes don't realize what could have been, and he's one of these guys. He would have been a surefire Hall of Famer in the NFL. Could have maybe went down as the greatest wide receiver in the history of the NFL. Was on pace to come close to that. Definitely on pace to be the greatest wide receiver in Steelers history. But now he's going to be known for what has happened in the last 5 years.
I still think he is the best wide receiver in Steelers history, certainly the best I've ever seen. If you dropped him onto those 70s teams, I think he would have been an absolute menace back then, even at his size, not the biggest guy in the world. He was never going to supersede Jerry Rice or, frankly, Randy Moss, but had he played 3 or 4 more years, I think he would have cemented himself as, like, at worst, number 3 on all-time lists for most people. But you're right, it's going to overshadow all the off-field stuff and the way his career ended, the way his Steelers tenure ended, the way his Raiders tenure never actually began, the way his Patriots tenure ended after one game, for those who forget that that actually happened. I think all of those things, plus his behavior off the field and the just continued legal entanglements he finds himself in, are going to very possibly keep him out of the Hall of Fame because writers and the Hall of Fame itself kind of just won't want him in there. And so you wonder, too, at this point, does that even matter to him? Like, I kind of wonder sometimes when I think about, what Antonio Brown has gotten himself into, what does actually matter to him? And frankly, I don't really have a good answer for that.
Right now, he's facing 15 years in prison. All right, switching gears to our Penn West University question tonight. Just scan that QR code in the right-hand corner of the screen. What would Pitt's record be if Mason Heinchel started at the beginning of the season? Chris, I know there's a lot of people within that, practice facility over there think that potentially Pitt could be undefeated right now.
Count me among them. I actually do. I know that is tempting to say, well, come on, it wouldn't be that good. And he's shown, obviously, and we had a chance to talk to him today, what an unbelievably polished kid. And I do say kid. He's 18, I think, still, or might have just turned 19. I'm not sure. But for 18 or 19 years old to be as polished as he is in terms of how he carries himself, though very confident, just incredibly well-spoken and able to kind of really give you interesting answers into how he views everything. Just very impressive overall. I will put myself in the 9-0 camp, though, because you might say, okay, he's thrown some red zone picks, he's been a little sloppy, he's maybe gotten too aggressive, but those have been in games where they've still been winning by multiple scores. Figure this, Rich. He starts off with some of the easy games that they had to start the year. He gets his feet wet. Obviously, he actually played against Duquesne, but he plays whole games as the starter. He learns the basics. I don't think they lose to West Virginia, and I don't think they lose to Louisville. So it might sound crazy, but I think they're 9-0 if he plays every game. He had been in the program. He had been around the program since spring ball of last year. So it wasn't like he was new to his teammates, Rich. In fact, I think that's part of the reason he's been so precocious. So if I think he's been the difference maker turning 2-2 into a 5-0 stretch, why wouldn't I think he would have turned those 2 losses into wins?
Yeah, good point. There's also a lot of people saying over there that he was the best quarterback in camp this year. So, all right, we'll talk more about Pitt. They have a big stretch coming up, 3 games against 3 ranked opponents. We'll get to that. And the Penguins, a huge win against the Capitals. Ovi, no goal for him tonight. 412-575-2600 is the number. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our Xfinity tweet of the night. Sidney Crosby now leads the NHL with 11 goals on the season. 38 years old. Age is just a number for Sid Crosby. Also, big win by the Penguins. Big win by Robert Morris, beating Drake, 81-79. All kind of wins. Wins for everyone here tonight, Chris. And the Steelers have a big game coming up. And, I don't know if that's going to be a win, but if their defense continues to play like it did last week, not the 2 previous weeks, I think that they're trending in the right direction. And I do think that there is something going on in that locker room. I feel like, and I've talked to a couple different players, and, last year was kind of cliquey is what some of the guys have told me. This year, they feel like, Aaron Rodgers is part of the reason why this is a locker room that's, all together right now. And I think that's why maybe something, I'm not going to say they're going to win a Super Bowl or anything, but maybe something special can happen this season, like win a playoff game.
Well, Rich, I could answer all of your things piecemeal here and first say, it really sucks for Drake. You pay Robert Morris to come out and play you, and then they beat you, which is actually what happened. I got kind of weirdly bummed out seeing Crosby and Ovechkin exchanging pleasantries before the game or whatever, or during a stoppage. Ovechkin's got like full gray hair.
Yeah.
That was kind of sobering to think about. But that game, when those two play and those 2 teams play, it absolutely still has the juice, and it did again tonight. It was a very entertaining game. And then as far as the clickiness that you just referenced, man, I would love to know who was behind it maybe last year. Perhaps that's the kind of factionalizing that you can have in a locker room when you have one quarterback start the season because the other guy's hurt. He goes 4-2. The other guy comes in, though, controversially maybe, and then he does well, but then peters out down the stretch. I would probably surmise, if I had to guess here, Rich, and I think this is pretty close to the mark, that the authenticity as a football lover, as a legitimate, genuine teammate, that I do think Aaron Rodgers has displayed this year, and that most of his teammates, even when he's been making headlines off the field, most guys will say, hey, I played with him, and he's legit, he's a great teammate, I love the guy, etc. I think that's a marked contrast to what Russell Wilson brought to the table. Who could forget Russell Wilson after blowing the Bengals game, telling Cam Hayward, come on, let's win 4, when Hayward was about to vomit his guts out onto the field because he was playing with the flu. I think there's an air of football authenticity for sure about Rodgers that I have to believe is galvanizing and appealing to his teammates. And honestly, I also think a guy like Jalen Ramsey, who like Rodgers has been there, done that, and won a title, I think that means a lot to the room, having a guy like that on the defensive side of the ball that's not afraid to speak up.
Yeah, and I agree. I agree with everything you said. Plus, you didn't mention, but I'm going to mention George Pickens not being around too. I think that had a lot to do with it too, because I think the locker room was split on him as well. All right, 412-575-2600 is the number. Let's go out to Matt in North Fayette. How you doing, Matt?
Hey guys, love the show. Just want to talk about the Pens tonight. Just a gutsy win after blowing another 3-0 lead. I mean, they lost to the Jets bad, and then they come back and they had a 3-0 lead against the Leafs, blew that in the third period, lost, and then basically the same thing. I mean, yeah, I know it's the second period, but again, you're playing the Capitals on a back-to-back, figuring, okay, they're tired. You blow that 3-0 lead. If they lost tonight's game, you could really see maybe a major collapse in this team. But that's definitely a very gutsy win by that team tonight. And of course,
I thought it was
that Tom Wilson goal, I thought, ended it. I mean, when they scored with 5 seconds to go in that period, I thought it was over at that point. Those are the worst kind of goals.
I thought they hung on in the beginning of the third period, and then you saw them slowly get a little momentum, do some decent work, being scrappy in their own zone on a penalty kill. Then they even it up and get it to 4-on-4, and then kind of the story of the season really for me has been once they get a chance, the old guys, the playmakers, make plays. I mean, Carlson with a bad turnover, then he gets a great takeaway in the neutral zone, gets them back going, and then Malkin with just what I would call a vintage, great players make great plays, pass and finish to Rust to get what ended up being the game-winning goal. To the point there that Matt was making, I mean, I do think you could draw some very harsh judgments about this team had they blown this lead. Couple differences, though, from the Maple Leafs game. I thought Jari was the problem, or one of the, if not the biggest problems in them blowing that lead. I thought 2 of the 4 Leafs goals were pretty soft goals, Rich, and so it's really hard for me to say fully that they blew it. I thought their goalie did them no favors, but I thought Shilov's was mostly not to blame for any of what happened tonight. I just thought they started playing poorly. The fact that they got up off the deck and were able to make enough big plays, basically, I'll use kind of a football term, but big plays when it mattered to win this game, I think is pretty significant. And once again, I know Ben Kindle didn't have maybe, every single shift was a gem, but he continues to look like he belongs, and that continues to be, actually, in my opinion, the A1 story for this team, even more than Crosby being great with 11 goals and Malkin having all these points. The fact that the 18-year-old kid looks like a star in the making, I think, is huge.
Yeah, he helped get things started tonight. There's no question about it. 2 power play goals by Crosby to get things started. I don't want to say that these were great saves by Shilovs, but he made 2 critical saves on Ovechkin midway through the third period. And I think, you can feed off something like that. And it wasn't too long after that Russ put the game away, and then they had the empty netter, and they go on to win 5-3. All right, so that was a big win for the Pens, and they could use that right now, snapping a 2-game losing streak. But, switching back to Pitt, I wanted to ask you about these 3 games. And this was a topic, I think, we debated it over Steelers among media today and yesterday. Say they would win these next 3 games, right? They would be a top 15 team, no question about it. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Miami. They win these 3 games. They get to the ACC championship and lose. Do they make the playoffs? I think you have to play Virginia in that scenario.
I think they'd beat Virginia for the record, but let's just say Virginia keeps getting away with it like they have all year, which they really have. Virginia, I will remind everybody, has a non-conference loss to a conference opponent in NC State.
I know, that's crazy, right?
It was a non-conference game, despite being against a conference opponent. Anyway, that happens more than you might think in college football, oddly enough. I think that they lose in the ACC title game, and they're a 3-loss team. They lose to Virginia. They probably don't make it, Rich. Here is the more intriguing one, though. Beat Notre Dame. I think they're 10th right now in the college football playoff rankings.
Yeah.
Beat Georgia Tech. They're 17th. You need Georgia Tech, by the way, to beat Georgia to make this really work, in my opinion. And then you beat Miami, who's currently 18th, I believe, in the rankings. You suddenly rack 3 top 20 college football playoff rankings wins, and then you go 10-2, but you get boxed out, weirdly, of the ACC title game. Who would have a better resume? I mean, the one bad loss to West Virginia would be a really bad loss, but the Louisville loss probably wouldn't stand out as bad. It would be, fine. And then they'd have 3 really high-quality wins, in my opinion, on their resume. If they went 10-2 and did not make the ACC title game but ran the table here, I'd put them in. And furthermore,
so who you're saying would be in the ACC championship? It would be Virginia and/or maybe SMU or
I think Duke. I think you could still have Duke get in there. Yeah, I mean, you can still have a team get in there that has 1 loss. Louisville has the tiebreaker over Pitt. I'd actually have to go back and look over all the schedules again. But I guess my point here is, too, let's just say Pitt goes 10-2 and doesn't get into the conference title game. It could happen. It absolutely could happen. Wouldn't you look at them if they were 8-0 with Heinschel and say it's kind of the inverse? And I said this to Bob yesterday because we were talking about it. It's the inverse of Jordan Travis not being there for an undefeated Florida State team a couple of years ago and Alabama going in over them. The committee decided to take Florida State out of there primarily because they thought they were a completely different team without their star quarterback. Couldn't you look at Pitt as an 8-0 team with 3 very high-quality wins once they actually – now, granted, in their case, it's not an injury. They made a switch. It's a coaching decision. But they would very much be one thing with Eli Holstein and one thing that's much better with Mason Heinschel. I'd at least think that the committee would consider that.
You know, you make a great point, and I would hope they would because they're a much better team. And if they don't get into the ACC championship, then you don't have the opportunity to win the ACC. But then those teams that were in the ACC championship, especially a team that would lose, would have an argument or a gripe why they didn't get over Pitt, right? So, I mean, it's a dilemma.
They could,
We've seen it before.
They could, but like, if they beat Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami, and those 3 teams collectively do not just completely collapse afterwards, then they'll have 3 pretty impressive wins that I think are going to look good on any resume.
No question about it. All right, we're going to take a break. Back in a couple minutes. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Coverage. Walsh along with Chris Mueller. We have about a minute to go here, Chris. And here's a question. We were just talking about Pitt, and we just got a tweet from Ryan. How likely is it that another program with large NIL money poaches Mason Heinschel after the season? I would imagine he would get Eli Holstein's money.
I think he's going to get more than Eli Holstein got. I think there's going to, if Pitt's going to keep him, I think it's going to be for a figure, a sum, that if people heard it, they would kind of, have their eyes bug out. But I know Pitt is working very hard to try to get this over the line with him. And listen, this is going to sound hokey, and I am as cynical as it gets. Talking to the kid today, he strikes me as somebody that if Pitt makes him a pretty fair market offer based on what other teams might try to throw at him, that he would actually stay. I do think there's a loyalty factor based on how under-recruited he was to Pitt, that money could at least maybe help bridge the gap on.
Yeah, there's something to say about success here, too. Thanks a lot, Chris. We'll see you next week. Hopefully we see you guys on KDKA News right now.